And Doug, I will hand over to you to present that second case study we're going to hear today about planning permission trigger points, drawing on the experience from Ullesford.
Great. Hi, everybody. Just before I proceed, can everybody see the right screen, a PowerPoint presentation? Great. Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Doug Eltham. I work for Devon County Council. I'm one of the team that run the Devon Climate Emergency project. The case study I'm going to present to you this afternoon is actually from Ullesford District Council in Essex. They've kindly given me plenty of information to pass on to you. They weren't able to present today, and I'll do my best to answer questions that you may have later. But if I can't answer them, we will get in touch with them and we'll get the answers ready for you for the next block of the assembly. So this is something they put in place back in 2006 to require residents to retrofit their properties when they were undertaking an extension to the house. So I'm going to take you through how that worked. So an extension to a property is often higher energy efficiency than the existing house because building regulations increase over time. They get better over time. So when you come to do an extension, you're obviously needing to build that extension to the current building regulations, and they will have upgraded the energy efficiency requirements since the rest of the house was built. So there are often things you can do to the rest of the house when you put the extension on. There's nothing to say that you have to do that. In the building regulations, which is national policy, you do have to do that to a non-domestic building, so a commercial building, where it's over 1,000 square metres. That's quite a big building, but nonetheless, that requirement is in there if you were to extend a non-domestic building. You would have to upgrade the rest of the building to the current building regs. Now, in the absence of that requirement for homes, Ullesford District Council came up with their own solution. So that's what I'm going to show you. So they used what's called a planning condition. So to extend your home, you need planning permission, and you get that from your district council or Torbay or Plymouth in the case of Devon. So for example, a district would be Exeter City Council or East Devon District Council. Torbay and Plymouth are also planning authorities, so they do that as well. And they put this planning condition on the consent that you would have received when you got permission to do your extension of your house. Now, I paraphrased it a little bit because it's usually written in fairly sort of legal jargon. But essentially, it's within 4 weeks of starting your extension, you had to detail the cost-effective energy efficiency measures that you'll carry out to extend your dwelling. You need to submit that to the local planning authority. And you need to do those measures either during construction or no later than 6 months following the completion of your extension. And the reason they put this planning condition on there is they suggest that in sort of planning terms, you're increasing the size of your house, you're going to be consuming more energy. So the least you can do is increase the energy efficiency of the house that you've already got. So here's the process, but interestingly, box number 1 is missing. Oh, there's box number 1, it's back. So you would get planning approval for your extension. You would then receive a questionnaire, which I'm going to show you in a moment, and that was up to you as the home owner, whether you completed that questionnaire. It's a home energy efficiency questionnaire. That would then help a buildings inspector who's employed by the local authority to give you a home energy efficiency report, and that would identify the programme of works that you could do to your house. You then install those measures, and the building inspector would come back and check that they've been done, and it would get signed off, and it would be shown that you'd met that planning condition. So it's a fairly straightforward process. Here are the list of measures that the scheme expected the householder to put in place. I won't read them all out, they're on the screen for you, but they're the ones you've heard about before, back on Wednesday evening from Kate Royston. It's insulation, it's heating controls, and the easier things like draft stripping and lighting upgrades. These are the ones that pay back quite quickly. You'll notice there aren't things on there like solar panels or a heat pump. They're a bit more expensive. Now, to keep the cost down to the person that is having the extension done, the measures had to pay back in 7 years or less. And the total cost of the measures could not exceed 10% of the cost of the extension. So if your extension was going to cost you £20,000, the total package of measures that you were expected to implement would not need to cost more than £2,000. Obviously, you could spend more than £2,000 if you wanted to, but you wouldn't be expected to. And the other caveat they put on it is that obviously there could be a sound technical reason why your house would not be suitable for some of those measures, but that would be picked up when the building surveyor looked at the house. Here's the questionnaire that was sent round. You can see, because this was 2006, things weren't really computerized yet. So this is a photocopy of the questionnaire. So this just helped the building surveyor understand what might be suitable for your house. When was it built? What was your wall construction? How much loft insulation have you already got? Things like that. But that was optional. If you didn't fill it out, what it essentially meant is that the building surveyor might ask you to do a bit more work than you otherwise might want to. And then the burden of proof was put on the householder to show that a measure would be not cost effective, because the building surveyor wouldn't know certain details about the house that they need to understand to work that out. Just a side issue, that's a picture of somebody using a thermal imaging camera that can be very useful when looking at homes to look for drafts, particularly around skirting boards and things like that. They show up as blue on the screen. So here are the results of the scheme. So this is from a sample of 291 extensions in the district. And the percentage here is showing you the number of those the percentage of those 291 extensions that needed a particular measure. So you can see it's not actually that many extensions received a measure. The most popular things were either the loft insulation or the low energy lighting. I think arguably, because we now have fluorescent and LED lighting very available, in supermarkets now, I think the low energy lighting would be a very small percentage contributor now, due to the fact the market's moved on for those. So fairly low effectiveness, arguably. A lot of people were obviously able to argue that the scheme, or that they already had quite a few of the measures, perhaps. And here's a breakdown on this pie chart of some of the reasons that were given. So this is now looking at the data behind this pie chart is now 660 extensions, not the 291 that you saw previously. I don't know why the numbers differ there. I can always ask that of Ullesford, but of the 660 extensions in this pie chart, 8% of them, the building surveyors failed to make contact. There was no response. So in a way, they got away with it. 21% were still to sort out. 30% of them, so 30% of the extensions, the building surveyor looked at the property and realised the property already had the measures that were being asked to be installed. So they didn't need to do anything. So you end up with the green section of the pie chart. 41% of those 660 extensions required something to be done. So 40% of the 660 required something to be done. And the estimated savings were £108 per year. And that's the energy savings that would have been achieved per year, having installed the insulation or the lighting, for example. And over the lifetime of those measures, an individual household would have saved an average of best part of £1,900. The life of the measure, what that means is, there's a company called the Energy Saving Trust. They were part of government, and they have tables of information showing how long on average a light bulb lasts, a thermostatic radiator valve lasts, how long a boiler lasts. So you take the average annual saving from a particular measure, times it by how long that measure lasts, and you end up with the lifetime cost saving. So what happened? Well, it was very well received by homeowners. There were no appeals on the planning conditions at all. But it reached the point by about 2009, so it's only 3 years later, it reached the point where most people were already aware of how they could improve their existing house when they were doing an extension. And that meant that the condition was largely not necessary. The colleagues at Ullesford have said that essentially the building surveyor just had to mention improving the energy efficiency of the existing house at the same time. And people were saying, yeah, I'm already on it, I'm doing it. And so the sort of administrative burden of putting the planning condition on wasn't deemed necessary. So they no longer do it. But nonetheless, it is still an option for local authorities to use. So just some considerations. So the average price of a medium-sized extension in Devon is up to £25,000. Now, adding that extension to your property, according to Rightmove, the property website, which has an extension cost calculator, they reckon that could add a minimum of 64, but maybe £74,000 to your house. So you spend 25 grand on an extension, and you end up with a house that could be £64,000 more expensive, or worth £65,000 worth more. So you've got that potential profit of £39,000. Now, under the Ullesford policy, the cost of the upgrade was limited to 10% of the cost of the extension. So that would limit you to having to spend £2,500. Yet you're ending up with a house that could be £39,000 more valuable. So there's still a lot of profit there, if you want to look at it as profit to the householder. Now, you've heard previously that things like solar panels and heat pumps, they're much more expensive, about £5,000 for the solar panels, £12,000 for a heat pump. So what if the cost limit were to be increased so that when people put an extension on their property, they had to spend a lot more, they had to dig a lot more into that potential profit margin in order to increase the efficiency of the remaining house? There's also the option, of course, for national government to add this requirement to the building regulations like it already is for the non-domestic dwellings, the commercial dwellings. So just in summary, the measure that Ullesford put in place, it would require households to retrofit energy efficiency upgrades at their own expense when extending their property. And in this case, it was effective on about 41% of the extensions that came through Ullesford's planning team. They set a limit on the cost of those upgrades, and it was well received at the time, but it's no longer used because they felt that people were aware of what they should be doing and they were taking the opportunity when they were extending their property to do so. So there we go. I'm going to hand back to Dom. Stop sharing my screen.
Thank you very much, Doug. And we can